This is the Ohio River. Spanning the borders of Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, the Ohio River is the third largest river in the United States. For generations, the Ohio River Basin has provided land, food, and water for communities to set up shop. From the Mississippian Native Americans to early English, French, and Dutch settlers, many civilizations have called the basin home. But what happens when the mighty river along which they built their towns and cities begins to fight back against that very same human intrusion? The day was January 18th, 1937. After almost 2 weeks of near torrential rain, the Ohio River was at a tipping point. Water was beginning to overflow its banks, and in the coming weeks, things would only get much worse, with water levels in 4 states reaching close to apocalyptic levels. On January 23rd, the city of Evansville in Indiana declared martial law as water levels within the city reached 54 feet. 3 days later in Cincinnati, Ohio, water levels reached 80 feet, which is the highest height recorded in the city's history. In Louisville, Kentucky, the next day, water levels reached 57 feet, and 70% of the city found itself underwater. On February 2nd, water levels in Paducah, Kentucky, passed 60 feet. The flood finally began to subside on February 5th, but in its wake left an estimated $8.7 billion in property damage and forced over 1 million people out of their homes. The flood was unprecedented and completely unexpected, so residents as well as community leaders were caught completely off guard by the wrath of the mighty river. In a move that was uncommon to the time, Kentucky, Ohio, and Tennessee radio stations began 24-hour, commercial-free broadcasts to try to aid communication and coordination between rescue crews. Though the number of seriously affected areas was relatively small, the flood response quickly became a national issue. Then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt authorized millions of dollars worth of supplies and aid to the affected regions, and sent thousands of WPA workers to assist in recovery efforts. The district engineer of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Major Bernard Smith, dispatched an entire fleet, but due to the low height of the area's bridges, the Corps' ships were unable to pass, forcing them to cross through farmland, dodging telephone and power lines across their journey. The devastation caused by the flood of 1937 seemed to awaken the citizens of the towns and cities along the Ohio River to the very real dangers facing their communities if at some point in the future, Mother Nature again tried to reclaim their land for herself. Policies and projects that came in the aftermath of the flood varied state by state. In Indiana, the state government formed the Indiana State Flood Commission, which built levees, concrete walls, and pumping stations to protect Indiana's cities. In Illinois, levees were built around the city of Hamburg to protect it from future damage. In Kentucky, the city of Louisville shifted future architectural endeavors to the city's east side, out of the floodplain. In Paducah, where the water had reached 60 feet, a flood wall was commissioned that still stands guard over the city today. But by far the largest and most permanent thing that resulted from the flood was the Kentucky Dam, which is located on the Tennessee River on the county line between Livingston and Marshall counties. Despite its name, and despite the fact that Kentucky politicians Senator Alvin Barkley and Representatives William and Noble Gregory pushed for its development, the Kentucky Dam was built largely by and is currently operated by the Tennessee Valley Authority. The dam was already being discussed by the U.S. government before the flood, but the actual flood itself just accelerated the process, as the public and politicians alike began pushing for more funding for the TVA so that they could better provide flood control, soil conservation, family relocation, recreation, electricity, and economic development. The dam was completed in 1944 and is still operating today, helping to ensure that another disastrous flood like the one in 1937 never occurs again. The relationship between mankind and our rivers is almost symbiotic. For thousands of years, rivers have provided us with land, food, and water. Because of our reliance on these great bodies of water, we can sometimes forget the potential of their true power. But events like the Ohio River flood of 1937 remind us that even if we don't need to fear rivers, we at least need to respect them.